Good afternoon, everybody. We'll give it about another half a minute for other participants to trickle in, and then we will get started. All right, well, we will get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for choosing to spend your afternoon with us. I'm Amanda Hackett. I'm on the CWR Board of Directors, and I'm co-chair of the Education Committee. I'm really excited for us to have Kat Hoenke here today to talk about the Saint Kateri Conservation Center. Just a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to Kat. In this webinar view, you're only going to be seeing the speakers. So it won't be a grid like in other Zoom calls you're used to. You won't see everybody's faces. But as we go, please feel comfortable with putting your questions into the chat feature or the Q&A, and Kat will answer them as we go or near the end, however they come up. If you have any unanswered questions, Kat has graciously allowed us to, we'll be sending her email address out to you and all the resources from this webinar. And it will also be recorded, so you can go back and watch it at your leisure. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kat to introduce herself and tell us more about Saint Kateri Conservation Center and how we can live Laudato Si. All right, Kat, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully that will work too. Okay, can you see that? Great. Thank you all for having me today. I'm really excited to talk more with you about our center and all of our programs that we have. And so my name is Kat Hoenke. I am the Executive Director of the Saint Kateri Conservation Center. And our center is essentially a nonprofit organization that is all online. So it's called a center, but we don't have a physical center yet. And we are comprised of all volunteers, actually. We are also a land trust and an online nature center, and we promote faith, integral ecology, and the diversity of life. That's our mission. And we were founded in 2000. We really started out as a website to collect as many quotes and scripture verses and information that we could from the Catholic Church about care for creation and ecology. And then we were incorporated as a 501c3 in 2012. And so we envision a faithful, loving home on earth for all people and the whole of God's creation. And so we were originally, it was Blessed Kateri Tekakwitha, or Gadeli Tegaguida, if you want to have the native pronunciation, back when we were founded by our founder, Bill Jacobs. But obviously she is now a saint. She's a Haudenosaunee Mohawk woman, lived in New York in the 1600s, very, very strong faith. I'm sure everyone on this call probably knows more about Saint Kateri than I do. But yes, patron saint of Native Americans and all those who work in ecology, and very, very, very devoted to Christ. And so we were named after her, particularly because our founder very much saw the need to work with Indigenous peoples and always bear in mind ancestral homelands and whose land we're on when working in conservation. And so that is our patron saint. And we really are comprised of professional ecologists and educators. We're all volunteers. We have a women majority board. We have Indigenous representatives on our board. And because we're all volunteers, we all have day jobs. And for the majority of us, we are ecologists. So by day, I direct a program that maps all of the fish barriers in the country for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and work to remove dams and fix road culverts for fish. So that's my day job. And our founder, he is He works for the Long Island Native Plant Initiative and focuses on native plants. And we've worked for the Nature Conservancy before, the both of us. And our board has ecologists as well as folks that work in education, teachers, and others. So that's really who we are as a staff and as a board. And really the way that we hope to bring about our organization is to really work with Catholics to care for creation in an innovative and new way, to really experience an ecological conversion first and foremost through faith and knowledge. So helping people to find the beauty in nature and understand how wonderful creation is, as well as the interrelationships in ecology and integral ecology, and how that really is a part of our faith. And then once people fall in love with this philosophy and with nature, then they want to protect it. And then that's when we can come in and share our expertise in ecology and science and restoration and preservation to help people make change on the ground. And it really must be a comprehensive approach. As I mentioned, needing to combine both the education in faith and ecology and an ethics of place. So bringing in that indigenous, through that indigenous lens, we have an indigenous program, which I'll share, and then really bringing through this habitat restoration, and how can we as Catholics care for creation in our parishes, in our schools, in our backyards, and do it in a way that is an ecologically sound methodology, like planting native plants and preserving natural areas. And so that brings me to our programs. We have several programs that help us to meet our mission, including our Saint Kateri Habitat Program, Education and Outreach, and our Catholic Ecology Library, our Catholic Land Trust, and we just started a new program called Parish Arcs, which I'll share a little bit about. Oh, and our Indigenous Peoples Program as well, which we'll also share. And so just starting, the very foundation of our philosophy is really to help people to experience this ecological conversion. And actually, a few of these slides I pulled right out of a presentation that I gave to middle schoolers. I talked to 200 Catholic school middle schoolers recently, and tried to really help them see, how can we really make a change in our society so that people who are Catholic see it, this is a part of our faith, and really want to make a change. And first and foremost, we need to fall in love with the land. And also have people pray and explore faith and connect with nature. Again, nothing new to this group, but it's really something that we seek to do first and foremost. In our website, you can see, how can I make a difference? One of the first things is pray and go to mass, but also, go outside and learn to read the book of nature. Really hearing God speak through creation. And I think a lot of times people forget that piece, and especially, church-going people don't think about this right away. And so we're really trying to bring this to the forefront of people's minds when they think of our faith too. And so really the biggest piece for us is bringing about programs that instill this change in people. And so understanding as well about the ecosystems and what kind of ecosystems are that does the Catholic Church steward. Catholic stewarded properties are some of the largest acreage that exists in a private landowner. And so really being able to steward that property well, as many religious congregations obviously know this. And so one of the ways that we are helping our supporters, but also others, to understand this is to go through iNaturalist. So we created this iNaturalist project in iNaturalist, which is a free citizen science-based application. And everywhere that we have been speaking, we promote to all those who register Saint Kateri Habitats, but as well just Catholics in general, go outside, and if you have a smartphone, you have access to a smart device, take photos of what you see, and it will identify it for you, and you can actually learn more about the types of species that you steward on your property, and then you might spark that ecological conversion. And so this is just a look at our BioBlitz. So we have this up there right now. It's in kind of an indefinite BioBlitz, but we have these projects. So if you if you join our project on iNaturalist, you can contribute to the 35,000 observations. It's a lot more actually now, and over 6,000 species that people, Catholic people have identified here. We also have an umbrella project that we have tried to digitize a lot of different parcels within like churches, and anybody who signs up and wants to have their property digitized. Anybody who uses iNaturalist on your property can then have this data set of species, and then conservationists can use that in order to quantify biodiversity, but also identify the highest priority places to preserve and restore as well. So that's iNaturalist. Our Catholic Ecology Library really is the largest online library devoted to these Catholic statements on ecology. And this is the first thing that started. This was the first piece of our entire organization, went back before, all of the new social media tools and other technologies were developed. And so this is where you can find a lot of different statements and beautiful quotes and other things from scripture and other places, all in our ecology library. And so all of the things that we do really start with this ethics of place and trying to help people understand the history of the community and the indigenous peoples who are or were lived there and were displaced, and understanding the plant and animal communities within the properties that we work and play and live in. And so that's one of the things that we promote first and foremost, is for people to go and look at this native land mapper, see what the native homeland, ancestral homeland, whose land you're on, and think about that through the lens of restoration and ecology. And so we're trying to bring this into the forefront of the folks that come upon our habitat program and other things, because a lot of times, especially me working in secular conservation as well, we don't actually have a lot of this this nexus with traditional ecological knowledge and with really respecting the history of the land and the people that were here before us. And so this is something that I think it should have happened a long time ago, but we're really trying to build that bridge now. And this is one of the major things, though, through our programs that we're trying to help move forward in trying to help people understand that, hey, you don't need all that lawn. It's really not necessary. It's non-native. We should be planting native plants. We should be rewilding property, not using these toxic pesticides, and understanding that insects and animals that are feeding on plants are important. If your plant isn't being eaten, it's not being a part of the ecosystem. Really changing that idea within communities, that we can transform our lawns into these living biodiverse places. And so, many different quotes about why we should do this. But, the more biodiverse your ecosystem is, the healthier it is, and the more sustainable it is, and resilient to climate change it is. So we can actually see the more native plants, the more diverse the native plants are on the property, the more other organisms that come to the property, and then the different in our food webs, how important it is just to plant a diversity of native plants on these lawns. And that's one of the key things that we've been trying to focus on. And that's through our Saint Kateri habitat program. And so this is really, how we're trying to drill this home. Creatures need habitat. Habitat destruction is the #1 cause of decreases of biodiversity. Plant those native plants. You want things to look like the top and not the bottom. And I think many, congregations and religious orders know this, are leading the way in this. And so I know many of you on this call, I'm sure, are further ahead than many of the folks that we are kind of talking to. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's really something that we're trying to bring to the forefront of everyone's mind. And so that the top is more natural and what you think of when you think of someone's property, that rather than that bottom picture there. And it's definitely a labor of love. And so we have our Saint Kateri habitat program, which was created really as almost like the National Wildlife Federation's habitat certification program, because we know there are a lot of people out there doing this. Lots of religious orders, lots of schools are now jumping on board, and people just, people that have their own property have been trying to move in this direction for a while. And we want to highlight that so that we can inspire other people to in turn want to do this as well. And so this habitat program is a certification, but it incorporates the Catholic faith as well. So it's having a religious element is required. And we also have a story map, so you can kind of click on the map and see who has these habitats and what they look like and photos of them. And so it really does help to evangelize in ecological evangelization among Catholics to transform and live more in harmony with creation. And so, as I mentioned, you have to have a religious element, but you also have to have one of the following 6 elements. So food, water, cover, and space for wildlife, native trees, plants, food, water, cover, and space for people, because that is another thing that I think separates our work from some of the secular work out there, is that we do not see people as the problem completely. We're supposed to live in harmony with creation, and obviously we are supposed to steward it and care for it. And so we want to have space for people and wildlife, ecosystem services, clean energy, and sacred spaces for worship and prayer. So if you meet all of these criteria, then you get a certificate and a dot on our map with your photos, and we do have signs available as well. We have about 400 habitats so far. Some of them range from absolutely incredible huge biodiverse tracts of land in the mountains of British Columbia, all the way down to someone's balcony with some native plants in a pot. And so there's lots of room for people to take a stepwise approach to this. But really it's starting to identify the plants in your biome, what lived there, and choose keystone species. And you can start small if you want to. And so that's really something that we've been hoping to grow, is our habitat program. And this, you can just go to our website and do that, and then we can take it from there. And many of our followers like to add Saint Kateri statues as well, so we have some good links for those too. And this is just a little look at our map. We are in a lot of different countries right now, and the colors represent parishes, private property, and we'll put a dot on your parish for privacy. So it's not, if it's an individual, we don't put that dot on their house unless they want us to. But parishes themselves are purple, schools are red. So we try really hard to make it a user-friendly experience for people to really see what's possible and want to do it themselves. This is that one I was thinking of in particular, the Queen of Peace Monastery. And so this is what theirs looks like. That's a pretty high bar, but some of the others are small, but they still do something. They still help the ecosystem. And this is my backyard. Actually, my daughter is 7 now, so this has changed a lot. But we planted a rain garden, and I realized even though I had been working in conservation for a while, I was not doing anything in my backyard. And I really didn't start thinking about my own footprint until I started to work with the Conservation Center. And so we got rid of some of our lawn and planted a big giant rain garden. And now, we had nesting hummingbirds. We've had so many wildlife experiences in our backyard, and as well as spiritual experience too, in that. So it's interesting how you can work in conservation for a decade and then not actually turn around and look at your own footprint until my faith became a piece of it. This is the Saint Kateri Shrine. So there's just a couple really pretty ones here that I can share. We also help to manage the Saint Kateri Shrine's meadow. We provided a meadow plan for how to manage that meadow. But this shrine is in Fonda, New York. And then there are folks that have more food gardens, and I believe that lake is this woman's backyard. So there's lots of different ones. This is a parish where they planted native plants for pollinators, made a monarch way station, and blessed it. And so we're just highlighting the efforts that are already happening, but also trying to inspire others who come to our website and want to begin this process. I believe this is one that used our website and our resources, and we have a volunteer horticulturist that helps too. They got rid of all of the lawn at this school, I believe. and are planting it with all native plants. And this is the one that we actually had our horticulturists go out in the Pacific Northwest to a specific parish and worked with them very closely to select the plants and plant the plants and build out this garden. So this is, I think, day one is when they planted them. This is when she took those photos. In schools too. And so as a part of our habitat program, one of the newer things that we've been working on is really looking at the Mary Garden and how we can look at Mary Gardens. And while they were obviously designed back a long time ago in Europe, there are not any native plants in the original Mary Garden plants, but we've been working pretty hard over the past year or so to identify different native plant cousins of the non-native Mary Garden plants and develop these designs for people to use in their own backyard. And so we have these Mary Garden designs for the Pacific Northwest, for the East Coast, and different plant lists with the original Marian symbology. And so you can see, you know, Pacific bleeding heart is the native species of bleeding heart to the Pacific Northwest, but bleeding heart, the European version, is the original. Okay, so that is our habitat program and some of the designs and ways that we can help people to actually care for creation in their own backyard through planting native plants. But we also have an Indigenous program, and this program is very much a bottom-up approach. We have an Indigenous coordinator. Her name is Ronnie O'Brien, and Ronnie has been working for a really long time with the Pawnee Nation. It's actually 22 years now that she's been working with them. And originally she met this keeper of the seeds, Deb Echohawk, from the Pawnee Nation back when she was working for, I believe, a museum, and she wanted to plant corn from the Pawnee Nation because many corn varieties from Indigenous peoples are not able to grow where they have been forced to live now. And so there's so many different varieties of corn that different Native people have had for a very long time. And back when she wanted to do this, she found that there was only a jar of 150 seeds with the original varieties of corn from the Pawnee. And they luckily worked with her to give her some, and so she could grow them in Nebraska, where they were forced to move from. And now they have successfully brought back, I think, 16 varieties of corn, working with a network of gardeners who live in Nebraska and give that corn back to the Pawnee. And so with that idea in mind, Ronnie is working with Deb to work with Catholics to grow different species of corn for other nations and give it back to them. So we have worked with the Kickapoo Nation to do that for them, with the Franciscan sisters, Wheaton sisters. And so this is happening on a small scale because it's often very hard, obviously, to build that trust. But it's also sometimes hard to find a willing landowner that has the space, and it's really not too much space, but I think this group might be really interesting. If there's anybody interested, please let me know. We're looking for a space in Ohio right now to grow Osage corn. So if anybody on this call knows of any congregations or landowners that would want to, it's very small, like 15 by 15, just to start, to grow this corn and give it back to the tribe and be in constant communication with us in that process to give it all back to them, in order to allow them to have this corn brought back to its homeland. So this is our Indigenous program, and again, on a small scale, in order to have these landowners available and the tribes that are willing to part with some of their corn in order to grow it again. So that is our Indigenous program, and I can also have anyone contact Ronnie as well if anyone's interested in being a part of this. And this is the Kickapoo corn that were grown by the sisters and given back to a Kickapoo family. And we also worked with the Wichita tribe as well in Texas too. And so I'm just going to move through these last two, and then we can have some questions. But our land trust program is really new. It was originally, the first part of our center is we always wanted to be a land trust, but as folks probably know, being a land trust can be a bit difficult, especially when there needs to be land needs to be purchased, and we are all volunteers. So we didn't have a huge budget. We still don't have a huge budget to purchase property. However, we do have the ability to hold conservation easements, and we also have a strong and very large network of conservation partners that we can connect anyone with that would want to work with a local land trust nearby. And we can also own property or have property donated to us. And that happened actually a year and a half ago. We had a couple who had purchased this property here in New Hampshire. You're looking at the boundaries right now, out from a developer. They did not want this to be developed. It's a really, really beautiful site, and they did not want to see it turned into homes. And so they bought this property and then held on to it for many, many years and decided that because they're aging, they wanted to have this property protected forever. And they had some stipulations about how they wanted it protected, that no secular land trust was meeting their needs. So they reached out to us and ended up donating this property to us. So this is our Brookfield Preserve, and it is also a conservation easement is also on this property. And I've been to a lot of different places, and I will say this is probably the most beautiful place I've ever seen, and it is our first land acquisition. And there's a baby porcupine we saw when we were out there recently. And it was one of those moments for me, especially, you know, in growth for faith. I had told our founder at one point, wouldn't it be amazing if the first property we acquired had a brook trout stream? And to me, that was like unfathomable. That will never happen. And, you know, God proved me wrong, because we ended up getting a brook trout stream on this property. There it is right there. There are beautiful brook trout in there, and it's just covered in wetlands and just amazing. So this is our preserve, and it is a forever wild preserve. So it will not have any trails or any public access. It's specifically a refuge for the critters to come from the surrounding areas that have a lot of different you know, four-wheelers and all that going on. So that's our land trust program, if anyone's interested in learning more about that. And so all of these programs really work together. Our habitat program, you know, all the folks that work with our indigenous program, our habitat, our certified habitats, our land trust is obvious, our preserve is obviously a Saint Kateri habitat. And so all of these programs are interwoven in order to really build this community of Catholics that care for creation and want to do things in this scientifically sound way, changing the way we view habitat in our community spaces, and making these changes on the land. And one of our latest program is called the Parish Arcs program. And so this is really seeking to work with parishes to change the way that the entire community looks at conservation and through the lens of Laudato Si. And so through our habitat program, sometimes we would find, you know, somebody would have a sea of lawn and plant 3 milkweeds in the middle. And so we wanted to move from the first step of making, say, one garden to really infusing a parish with all of these values. And so that is what the Parish Arcs program is supposed to be. And it was modeled after, you know, the Irish bishops recently seeking to have parishes conserve 30% of their property for pollinators and biodiversity. And we thought, you know, that's such a wonderful goal to have. How can we implement that here in the US? And we received a little bit of funding from Notre Dame to look at the parish properties, and on pretty much all the properties, but the parishes too, in the Diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend, and look at them using high resolution land cover classification and GIS tools. By day, I'm a GIS coordinator. And so this is kind of my bread and butter. And we used a lot of GIS tools to look at these properties, identify the different types of land cover that's in them in order to identify, hey, what is the 30%? What's the acreage of 30% of lawn we would need to convert to meet this goal, if this is the goal that we choose to meet. So you can see on the left, that's a parish. On the right, that's what it looks like if you split it up into these different classes of land. So low vegetation, which is lawn, forests, impervious surface, buildings, and water. And how can we set goals based on these classifications? 30% rewilded. Can we also set goals about forest preservation and restoration? Can we make impervious surfaces permeable? Can we make our buildings sustainable? Can we restore streams or buffer them or make them healthier? And so how can we do this for a parish in a way that makes sense and perform a microanalysis to dig in and look at, hey, where's the best place to restore a meadow? In there, we're looking at different cutoffs on sizes of these patches of land cover. Bigger, more contiguous patches are better for meadow creation because they can create this large scale space for a self-sustaining meadow. Where could we want to restore forests that might be in the most ideal location? Where would we want to preserve it? Big tracts of land that are in pollinator corridors or migratory bird corridors, where you want to keep that forest in a larger patch size. And so taking these GIS analyses and being able to show that to a parish and holistically look at their property, and rather than just one small garden, where can we make these large changes to really make the entire site sustainable? And so that's pretty much all I have for presentation. I can go into any of the different programs in more detail if there's any questions, because I think, that was quick compared to all of the information that is in each of those buckets. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and would love to have anyone reach out if you want, and happy to answer questions.
While we wait to see if any trickle into the chat box or the Q&A, you can feel free to pose your questions there. I just had a question for you, Kat. First of all, thank you so much for sharing all of this. These are a lot of amazing programs, and it's really cool to see how the center intertwines ecology with faith. So it was really cool to see all the different things you guys do. Since there are so many different things, I was curious just at this time what you see the greatest need is from people who are interested in being part of your programs.
Yeah, I guess in terms of need, I think in particular when thinking about congregations and religious orders is really, this is an odd one that I didn't mention before, but we have like a guest blog, and one of the things that we would love to do is highlight some of the wonderful things that people are doing at the large scale. And I know a lot of religious orders are doing a lot of conservation easements. They're doing lots of large scale restoration and preservation, and being able to share that to our larger audience. We have a actually pretty large Facebook audience. We have a decent size of website hits and social media. So being able to kind of shout that out would be really great if anybody has any really cool stories about that. And I think one of the things that we would also love to do is keep our land trust program moving forward. So if anybody's thinking about land preservation but hasn't done it yet, I know a lot of people have and already working with land trust, but if there are any that are not yet, we would love to work with you. So I think, through the lens of religious orders, that's probably the biggest piece. But I do have it's my personal dream because I remove dams for a living, but if anybody knows of any Catholic stewarded properties that have any needs for stream restoration, dam removal, culvert problems, and work on that regard, I think blending Catholic faith with dam removal. We're trying to look at stream restoration right now and how we can better help people who have access to water on their property be better stewards of that. And that's really my expertise as well. So if anyone has that nexus, that would be really cool to do too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the blog sounds like the perfect way that communicators can help. So
yes.
Looks like we had a couple questions come in on the chat. Sister Carol asked if you could share more about the annual Catholic BioBlitz.
Yes, and that's another need of ours too. So we have the BioBlitz, which is, we did end up having, it was originally like a month, and we had so much interest and people wanted to continue to take these observations, that it's really just an open project at this point. And so if you download iNaturalist, which is free, and you sign up for a username, you can find our project and you can join our project. And then anything you observe will be counted under our umbrella of people that, Catholics that are doing this work. But on the flip side, if you have large properties that you would like to start an iNaturalist project on, so those are two different types of projects in iNaturalist. One is a collection, and that's kind of like anybody who's in this project across the country who can take observations anywhere. That's what our BioBliss is. The other one is, in particular, we digitize the boundary in iNaturalist, and anybody who uses iNaturalist, even if they have nothing, they haven't signed up for anything, they haven't joined a project, if they take that observation on your land, then it will show up. And then what you get is a URL that could say, your congregation name, and then you'll have, all the species that were found there by anybody who came onto the land. So that is, we can do that for you and set that up. We've done it for other religious orders before. And it's really cool to see, because you can essentially collect biodiversity data and a species occurrences on your property with just the people that come on there, the sisters that are already there. So that one's another really cool one that we would love to do on large properties.
Thanks. I hope that answers your question, Sister Carol. And then Sister Joanne had also put in the chat, wondering, is this initiative connected with the Land Justice Futures coordinated by the Nuns and Nuns group?
So we have met with them before, and we're working on, connecting more with them, given that they were more new and we have somewhat limited capacity given our funding situation. So I'm very much aware of them, but we are not yet connected with them. One of the things that we would love to do is, I know they've written, I believe they've written protocols for going about land back and other types of situations like that. That's another thing we would love to do, is help facilitate giving land back to Native tribes. And so, yeah, so we're not yet coordinated completely with them, but we're aware of them and hoping to collaborate further with them.
Okay. And then we have a question in the Q&A. Someone asked, do you do any major annual pushes or campaigns for involvement, particularly on the feast day of Saint Kateri or during the season of creation?
So during the season and also surrounding Saint Kateri's feast day, we have done, so on our website and on our email list, in previous years, we've done a novena that we've sent out every day to people on our mailing list. And we actually ended up with a decent sized group in our mailing list that wanted that daily novena for her. But during her feast days and season of creation, we have really just pushed our existing programs. We don't have a like a social or education or outreach staff person, so we do the best that we can, but we have had several videos that have gone out through Catholic Climate Covenant and other of those. Like, we work with Laudato Si movement as well, who will share our resources during these important days and times, just to get us out there for it. So we haven't done anything particular like special, but just more pushing of, hey, you can, this is season of creation, think about how you might plan your Saint Kateri habitat, kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know I'm on the board of directors for CWR, and we often talk about how, like you, we all have our day jobs, and it's very much a labor of love to do what we can for the organization. So I'm curious, I don't see any more questions right now, but I was surprised to learn that you guys are all volunteer staff. So I was just curious if the plan and the hope is to eventually move into like a full nonprofit with paid staff. Go that route.
Yes, that is the dream. And I will say, all of us who volunteer for the center, we do not have the expertise in like development and fund development. Like Bill, who's our founder, and I, and our horticulturist is a new graduate. And so the three of us who are essentially staff, we're all like field people, ecology people, but we don't, and we've done lots of grants, but mostly for federal funds. And so the whole concept of developing funds and seeking out grant applications from like private donors is not really our expertise. So we've tried a couple times to see about programmatic funding for our organization. And usually what we run into is that we'll spend a lot of time putting forth an application and for very little return for us because maybe we're just not writing it right. So we do hope to do that. And it's just a matter of finding, you know, a foundation or organization that is interested and that we can target for requesting funds. So yes, if we can get the funds, paid staff is definitely a goal. I think, you know, just recently working with Notre Dame, that's really the first funding we were able to get, and it's very much focused on GIS work for that parish arcs program as a pilot for that diocese. But it's not like a bigger programmatic funding for like to actually push forth our program. So that is the goal. Eventually we're still kind of spinning our wheels to like, how do we do that? So if anybody has any recommendations on places we could seek funding where, you know, we might have a decent shot of getting it, please let me know and we will try.
All right, we have another question that came in the Q&A. Dusty asks, would it be accurate to say that Parish Arcs creates land management plans?
Yes, I think that would be accurate to say, because we have not yet done it because our pilot parish arc diocese right now, we are at that point now where we're ready to do a land management plan for one of the specific properties within that diocese. So yes, it is fair to say we don't have yet an example of when we've done it because we've just started this that's our pilot diocese, so we're about ready. Yeah.
All right, and then Dusty also asked, sounds like there is a payment from Notre Dame that's in process. Would future parishes pay a fee too? Or sorry, from Notre Dame for that process. Would future parishes pay a fee too?
So right now, we are pretty much, you know, we are willing to work with a parish without the funds. So if there's a parish that wants to be a part of our parish arcs program, we can work with them. So a parish wouldn't have to pay a fee. We do think and hope that our next phase of our work with Notre Dame will incorporate another diocese to move with next. So no, right now we are able to work with other parishes on a volunteer basis, like the parish, the Madeleine in Oregon that our horticulturist was working with. That was all just, you know, volunteer work. So, I mean, we hope that we'll get funds, but we're not going to require a parish to pay in order to be a part of it.
And then she also, sorry, I was going to say Dusty follows up by asking if we wanted to pay, what is the estimated cost?
Ooh, I think let me get back to you on that because I actually am not the one that our horticulturist, she prefers to go out there and give a really nice recommendation of where to plant, what to plant, and really get to know the community if there's like a care for creation ministry in the parish. And so some of that would be from her work and what it takes for her to do that. But yeah, so let me see what that might be. And I can email Dusty. And I will also put in here, and I thought I had a slide at the end, but I didn't, of our parish arcs website because there's like a stepwise kind of process in there of what we think the parish arcs program, you know, what we think it really would be to be a parish arc. And it's like starting with the parish, you know, looking at their property and asking that question, who was here before? What did this look like before? And then going through that whole process of, you know, what does it look like to do to convert 30%? How much of our land is 30%? And that is the GIS piece. And then identifying other ways to preserve the actual or conserve and restore the places to get to that goal. And so there's 4 steps here, 5 actually. Actually, I have Goes 1, 2, 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. So it's 6 steps. Again, gotta fix that. But here you go. I'm gonna put this in here. And then, oh, you already did it. Thank you. That's the sub page of the page that Brian posted. But that gives you a little bit more detail on the parasharks and what we're going for. But it's a very new program.
All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions right now, so if anyone has any, feel free to pop them in while I'm finishing up here. I have just a few extra reminders. First of all, I want to say thank you to Kat for sharing all about the center. There's a lot of amazing programs, and it looks like a lot of different ways congregations can get involved and promote Laudato Si and Season of Creation. For everyone remaining, I'd ask you to please take the survey after this is over so that the Education Committee can continue to provide webinars and flash conversations for you. The survey is going to show up a little differently this time. It's actually going to appear in a new tab after you exit out of the webinar. So again, please just take that to help us out. Brian will be sending out an email with resources afterward for all the resources that were shared here. Kat has been gracious and let us know you can email her at any time with questions or ideas. And then a few upcoming CWR workshops to keep in mind. Thank you, Brian. We have a flash conversation on Friday, September 13th. That's going to be about IT and communications and development. We have the CWR conference coming up in less than 2 months in Chicago. So if you haven't registered, please be sure to do that. I think there's still time to book your hotel at where the conference is being held. Oh, yep, that's right on there too. And then the last thing I just want to remind everybody is you have received information about the CWR Board of Directors proposal to dissolve CWR's 501c3 status and become a formal affiliate of LCWR. In order to make this reality, it does require that we get a 2/3 vote from all eligible members. So it's imperative that you do help us vote. Brian will put the link in the chat. So please, if you haven't done it already, please go ahead. It's a very quick couple buttons and that's it. And it's, again, very important for us to be able to implement this change. So thank you again for spending the afternoon here. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and always feel free to reach out to board@c4wr.org if you have any questions. So thank you.
Thank you.